Servus. A warm welcome to this new episode of the Werte podcast, Werte Connection. Normally with Christian Probst and myself. Today, however, is a somewhat different episode, a very special one. Not because dear Christian isn't here today, but because I have the honor to having a very special guest here and I'm interviewing her. I am sitting here in my living room and today I want to talk about the topic of freedom with the wonderful Carley Rabbit. She's one of the top female bushcrafters and wilderness instructors in the USA, with traditional Native American skills such as flintknapping with obsidian and the artistic crafting of knives and jewelry from natural materials. She has just increasingly built up a successful business over the past years. As a woman in the bushcraft and wilderness scene, she has gained a strong presence on social media and acts authentically and down to earth, with many followers and fans, but also hate comments. She lives and works on the Pacific Northwest and has spent the past 7 years living off-grid in the forest in various small cabins.
Also, hey Carley, let's talking about the topic about freedom and freedom in the wilderness and wilderness skills.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Carley and I've been living off-grid for the last 7 years. I teach traditional wilderness skills like making stone tools, building shelters, and also sustainable agriculture as well.
That's what we really have in common about the interest in permaculture and the background in gardening.
Yeah, that was kind of the first couple skills that got my feet wet into wilderness skills. And from there, it kind of snowballed on. But I'm a wildlife conservationist and I live in the Pacific Northwest and I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, don't be too excited because, this is like feeling in home. You're sitting here in my living room and having it cozy by a coffee together. Do you want at start make your introduction a little bit more detailed and tell us how did you get into wilderness skills and what where you're starting with permaculture and how about the elderly outdoor college and a little bit that stuff.
Yeah, so I grew up my whole life kind of moving around a lot with my family and we kind of rotated between
No problem.
Should I start over?
Yeah.
Okay. We often switched between living in rural areas and urban areas. And I was born on a farm, and so a lot of the culture when I was very young was surrounded by hunting and fishing and family and
So my question is, would be how old did you have been when you started then into wilderness skills, and why?
When I was born on the family farm, and there was a lot of hunting and fishing and a lot of Midwest country culture. And moving away from that, it was very jarring, and I missed it a lot, and I feel like that really shaped a lot of my childhood. And it wasn't until my teenage years that I ended up getting back into wilderness skills after moving from the city of Seattle to Whidbey Island and all of a sudden being surrounded by nature instead of being in a city environment, and just realizing how calming it was for my nervous system. It really helped me find my path in that and started really enjoying being in the woods and just having a different kind of stimulation rather than what I was experiencing in the city.
And you was really in the woods, and on some point you could say there the off-grid life started a bit because you was a teenage girl and living in a tent, right?
Yeah.
Would you like to tell that story a little bit?
Yeah, when I was a teenager, I really enjoyed being in the woods, living in a bell tent. It's kind of like a yurt without the wool or the frame. And on the West Coast, it's very rainy, so it was a pretty interesting experience. There's a lot of perks to living in the woods, but there's also a lot of challenges as well.
How old you have been exactly?
I think I was 16
That's
at the time,
pretty
yeah.
Cool. Something what's a little bit rare here. I would love to ask you some questions about your experiences the last 10, 12, 15 years and about the wilderness skills, wilderness community in general. What is freedom? Freedom for you from the perspective as a woman into wilderness skills and bushcraft?
I would say for me, my idea of freedom would be to have financial stability and be on a piece of land, or at least live closer to a natural environment and actually have time to enjoy it. I feel like a lot of people struggle with the challenges that they're so busy with their modern life and a lot of day-to-day chores and activities that kind of pull them away from traditional skills, natural settings, and a lot of things that can be beneficial to your health and your nervous system. And for me, that's my idea of freedom, is being able to enjoy the wilderness while also kind of staying in balance with having to live in a modern setting.
Would you agree when I say choosing a decision or making a decision for your freedom is always, on the other hand, also a price to pay? Always when we decide something or go in a direction, we say yes to this direction, but no to all other directions. What price was it to pay for you to choose the decision 7 years living off-grid in a cabin and such a primitive life, hauling water, hauling wood, and hard work, I guess, and the winters?
Yeah, so with it, living any kind of alternative lifestyle, there's going to be compromises. And there's definitely a lot of compromises that you have to make in order to live off grid in general. Because, I mean, just a few hundred years ago, living that kind of lifestyle was the norm and everybody lived that way. But these days, it's become considered an alternative lifestyle. And so in order to kind of uphold that traditional style of living, you have to give up a lot of things in order to kind of stay in balance. And, even just the fact of living rurally is a challenge because there's not a lot of job opportunity. You're going to be moving off grid. You kind of have to figure out how to make a living, and you're giving up modern conveniences as far as having quick access to grocery stores or resources. Sometimes you're far from a hospital or, emergency services, and even just communication. Like living off grid with a solar system and no backup is kind of dangerous sometimes. And so there's a lot of small details that you kind of have to think about, and a lot of compromises that we had to make when I first started to live off grid.
Do you want to tell me this little story, what is also dangerous about in your life in the winters when you have not the responsible, or are you not responsible enough and let the oven go out or stuff like that?
Yeah, there's especially living off grid by yourself or living in a remote setting by yourself, there's a lot more pressure on, you're basically going to be your own source of electricity, your own source of heat, your own source of power and transportation. And so there's a lot of things that you have to kind of take responsibility for. And one of the biggest things in the wintertime is the heat.
What happens when you're not waking up at night and do new wood and stuff?
Yeah, so I live in a very small cabin, and it gets cold very quickly if I don't continuously load my wood stove with wood. And so because I'm the only one there, I have to wake up sometimes in the middle of the night on the really cold nights that are below zero to stoke the fire. And if I don't, there's a risk that my cabin could start freezing, and it could be very dangerous.
So you would literally freeze to death? Is it possible?
I mean, it's possible. Hopefully I won't, but I also have a negative 12-degree sleeping bag, so that helps.
Yeah, that's very interesting to listen to you and about that lifestyle. And what you was telling brings me to my next question, because you said living in a remote area or making the decision to be so, how you said it, rural area outside, that you have what you do for a living. And, there is not a lot of job opportunities. So with what do you earn your money, and what is your decision? I mean, I know it, but if you would like to tell it, and then I have my next question about that topic.
When I first moved off grid, I was struggling a lot to find a job. And so I just took whatever job I could find, at a restaurant or, doing farm work, and it was good while I could find it. But in order to have true stability and live in a rural setting and not have to struggle, you kind of do have to work from home, because there's so many things that you have to take care of on your own, as far as just staying alive and having all of these small things that add up into hard labor on your day-to-day life. Also, commuting to another job is very strenuous, especially in icy conditions. So my experience has been that working from home is the way to go, and so that kind of led me into trying to build a business for myself. And so I travel around and I teach wilderness skills workshops in the warmer months, and in the winter months I make traditional art and gear. I'm a flintknapper, so I make stone tools and accessories, and I share a lot of traditional wilderness art with people, and that's one of my biggest passions.
And over the last year, you got really successful and slowly popular with that, and also as a bushcraft and wilderness skills content producer on Instagram.
Yeah.
And over the last year, and now it gets a really good thing, right? And my question would be, are you as a woman and bushcraft content producer on Instagram free, and how are your experiences in that point?
I think that Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all of the social media platforms that I've built over the last few years have been key for me to be able to live off grid. And it's kind of ironic because, the last thing I want to do is sit on social media as someone who loves being in the woods and just enjoy being at peace and having quiet time. But it really has been key for me to be able to generate income and be able to live where I want to live. And so I'm very thankful to find a wilderness community online. And I kind of set out to inspire women to get into bushcraft and wilderness skills, but I ended up finding a really supportive community of men in that as well. And so if there's any women out there who want to follow me,
I think you already do. You are already a big inspiration for young women or women in general in the bushcraft and wilderness community. And you already do a great work and great job. My question would be, is it also as a woman, what is the other side of this freedom? What are the other hands as being a woman in bushcraft content? There is a lot of ugly and stupid stuff too, I guess.
Definitely. I mean, being on social media in general is just kind of strange because people can hide behind their screens and say negative things about you. And, if I met any people in real life, they probably wouldn't say anything negative to my face. But just kind of being in that dynamic of constantly being perceived by people around the world and being judged in certain ways too, it can be kind of scary, especially because sometimes I get a lot of hate mail and people who just want to put me down for one reason or another. That's pretty normal on social media, but getting lots of those messages on a day-to-day basis can be stressful. And
I guess. So you don't get only appreciation and props for what you do. And I guess especially men have sometimes big problems with their ego or messaging bullshit about a woman who is skilled in bushcrafting because for some reason it triggers them.
Yeah, it's usually either one or the other. But I'm pretty lucky to have such a good community of people who are supportive. But there is always a small portion of them who have something to say.
Yeah, thank you for talking about this too. Yeah, would you say the hard life of hauling water and wood and this all those hard winters in a cabin out in the woods in the middle of nowhere, is that really freedom? Can that be freedom?
I think that it feels like freedom in a lot of ways, but if you don't have a sense of community or people there to support you, it can be very challenging. And, you do give up a lot of time and energy just being able to survive on a day-to-day basis. And so it is freedom, but like I said in the beginning of our conversation, there is also a lot of compromises too. So It just depends on what kind of lifestyle you want to live, and living off grid by yourself is definitely considered like an alternative lifestyle to the extreme, whereas a lot of people can probably find something in between that isn't as daunting, especially, people who live in the country who still want modern amenities and, living a little bit in between modern and rural lifestyles. That's possible too.
And for all those romanticizing wilderness lovers or people who are longing for more freedom, or I go and cut the system, I live in the woods, to say this very clear, if you accidentally cut into your leg by making firewood, you would probably be fucked.
Yeah. Yeah, that is definitely a challenge, especially being on my own. That's one of my biggest concerns, and my biggest challenges is feeling like I am completely responsible for my safety. And so I have to, on a day-to-day basis, keep a lot of small things in mind, like...
How do you think brings wilderness skills and nature connection freedom to people?
I think that wilderness skills and traditional skills are really important for the younger generations to learn because, first of all, they are kind of becoming a lost skill in this world. And as far as giving people more freedom in their lives, having that knowledge of traditional skills and survival skills gives people a lot of confidence in order to be able to just travel in general. And, if anything were to happen, if you were in an emergency situation or you ended up in a survival situation, you would be able to keep a more even head and feel a little bit more confident with your own set of skills and being able to rely on yourself in that kind of situation. Or if you're just looking to live a more natural lifestyle, living off grid, you have to have those backup skills in case your systems fail.
And I guess you had a lot of inspiration and experiences by yourself already, and you was already telling a little bit about your life and how you grown up, and also on a farm. And you said your dad was also into nature skills and took you hunting, or you learned fishing, and you have a lot of siblings and brothers. I think you really learned how to enjoy nature in different ways. I forgot one question. I maybe cut it on another place. How did it affect your childhood and growing up with European and Native American ancestors?
That's a good question. So because I lived in Sweden growing up with my family, we were exposed to a lot of more nature-based learning, and we spent a lot of time playing in the woods and not very much time playing inside on like video games or anything like that. And so that really shaped my childhood in a lot of ways, and reconnecting with my native ancestors has also been very special to me too, and learning a whole other culture and sets of skills and traditions that I otherwise wouldn't have learned. But wilderness skills, in my opinion, is something that every single person has in common throughout the whole world, and I really think it can be used as a powerful tool to bring us all together and unite us. And I really love learning wilderness skills from all different cultures, and that's been very special for me to kind of branch out and reconnect with skills that my ancestors knew.
We here in Europe, we often make this that we, and that's for some point hilarious or as ironic joke, but we here Europeans take the indigenous people from all over the world, we romanticize them or romanticize it, and now want to save and keep a lot of the knowledge what literally our ancestors has destroyed 400 or 500 years ago. But there is something about that we romanticize, or that we want to keep the wisdom and the knowledge about from indigenous people all over the world. I think it's just about the natural way how to live wilderness skills and nature connection, because they always did. Did that inspire you too at some points?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Did that inspire you too at some point?
Yeah, I think that indigenous cultures from around the world are inspirational in general because they've been able to maintain a lot of their culture against all odds and their traditions against all odds. And especially with the modernization of, the entire world, it is very inspirational to see that cultures have been able to hold on to their nature-based living. And I think that I can't imagine what it must be like to fully live in a traditional way without any modern resources and still be able to survive just given the conditions of the world at this time. And I think there's a lot of lessons we can learn from indigenous cultures.
Would you think living a nomadic lifestyle would cause more freedom for humans?
I think that living a nomadic lifestyle is possible, but it definitely has its challenges, just like off-grid living and any alternative nature-based living. Finding that balance between the modern world and traditional styles of living is very difficult. And just like I said before, there's always going to be some kind of compromise as far as living a nomadic lifestyle. Times aren't like they used to be where you would be able to move freely on the land. And, laws are different, and
you would definitely trespass.
Yeah, and even just the amount of resources that are available too. It's not like everyone could just all of a sudden live a nomadic lifestyle.
So we have to accept the times, and this whole world has really changed, but we have always to handle with that what is there actually, and we still can live modern ways of nature connection and appreciation to all that resources and the Mother Earth in general. At last question, do you have one advice about nature connection and wilderness skills for young women or young people in general?
I would say if I had one piece of advice, if you were trying to get into wilderness skills or sustainable living or any kind of alternative nature-based living, is just start where you are and start small. And, I didn't just all of a sudden live off grid and have a set of skills. It just started with planting something in the garden. It started with learning one plant in my neighborhood. And it started with just sitting with nature and observing and seeing what's around me and learning about my natural environment where I am. And even if you're in an urban environment or a city, you can start to grow microgreens in your window. Just start small and don't bite off more than you can chew too fast, because that's kind of where things get dangerous. So if you just, don't try to overwhelm yourself with learning everything all at once. Just start small and let that knowledge grow over time.
As long as you start and as long as you make that first step, that's what you want.
Yeah.
That was a really good description. Don't bite more than you can chew. I like that. Cool. Yeah, thank you for answering me all my questions and for this very interesting conversation, and that you had the time to do this with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I will not cut that.
Yeah, this was the English version of my interview with the amazing and wonderful Carley Rabbit and her experiences as a woman in bushcraft and the wilderness scene, and her opinion about freedom and about living in the woods. Thank you for listening. I hope you forgive me my English. I'm not a native speaker. I hope you will understand everything all right. And see you at the next time, again with my colleague and friend Christian Probst in the podcast Werte Connection. Thanks for listening.